getting off work, getting ready to leave. How are you? Thank you for being here. Just waiting for my car to defrost. Besides freezing my fingers off paint. I have to go get some coffee just to get warm. Oh goodness. Gotta do the 45-minute drive. Get some coffee. I work at Audley making airbag parts. You know, the pipes that ignite the airbag. That's what I do. How about yourself? Hopefully I don't run into some dodo heads. I swear every day since I've been leaving someone's place. Driving like dodo heads. Man, look at the frost on the grass. So frosty. Pretty much introduction. Where you from? I live in Utah, and it's 6 a.m. Just getting off work. I work grave shift. Cold where you're at. I'll be right back. It's like hi, Lorraine. Hello, Lorraine. Hopefully I ain't saying the name wrong. Alright. I will be right back.
But also think that, sometimes putting these things on display seems to celebrate these horrific crimes. I will confess that a few years ago, I was part of Washington State, and I went into this quaint antique store, and as I was looking at things, and this was a real mom and pop joint, but there was a pipe, a wooden pipe, and it had a tag on it that said Charles Manson's Pop Pipe. And I was like, what? And I started talking to the owner, and he claimed that there was this chain of authenticity that this was a pipe that Charles Manson used. And I guess I'm just so much of a collector. I was like, I've got this opportunity to buy this really weird thing. I don't really want it, but what if there's something that is interesting? It turns out I can do with this. I'm like trying to talk myself into buying something that I felt like I should. But I finally looked, I bought it, right? So I bought this thing, and I shipped it back to myself. And as soon as I received it, I was like, I should know why I bought this. And I thought about just going out and burying this somewhere, but actually I moved it. I don't know where it is, so I still have this pipe somewhere. And that's the only time I've bought something that's kind of connected with a nefarious person like that. And so, it's like I say, if you're a real collector of obscure stuff, sometimes you just have an opportunity to go for a purchase, and you know that you can always get rid of it if you don't want it, but you hate to pass up on the opportunity if you have it. So anyway, that's my little brush with all that. But the man who made maybe the biggest impact on me at this meeting was this man who started telling me that he found that his life had improved dramatically since he started studying Enochian magic. Now, I've heard of Enochian magic, and I know a little bit about the book of Enoch, and so I figured it was kind of based on that, but I didn't know exactly what he was talking about. And so he started explaining some of the techniques and some of the concepts behind it, and I became more and more intrigued with it, because it has to do with summoning angels. It's a very positive form of magic that is, to some degree, biblically based. And so, since that party, I have started reading up on this thing called Enochian magic. And it became more and more intriguing, and I figured at some point, well, since I've been learning about this, let me just tell you what I've been learning, because I think you'll find it interesting as well. Now, you've probably heard about this thing called the Book of Enoch. It's an ancient Hebrew text that tells the story of a man who lived before the Great Flood. And he was so beloved by God that God allowed him to go straight to heaven without ever dying. He was 365 years old when he was taken to heaven. But he got to go up there and hang out with all the angels, and they showed him around. came back to Earth to tell everyone about it, which is how we have the story that's in the book, before he was finally spirited back up to heaven once again and never seen. Now, this book was written thousands of years ago, and copies were even found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. He wrote explicitly about the fallen angels, the Nephilim. He calls them the Watchers. And I'll get more into that shortly. And his book really tells the entire story of humankind from the creation and the battle with the Nephilim leading to the Great Flood, all the way up to events into the future when the Messiah will finally come and how that will affect things. It's an epic story. But you know, when you hear these narratives about the Nephilim coming to Earth and taking human daughters as wives and the Anunnaki and the giant offspring and all this stuff, a lot of it comes from the storytelling in the book of Enoch. And just to be a little more official, I want to give you some information from the Wikipedia entry on the book of Enoch, just to make sure that I get all the high points and the facts. But then I'm actually going to start reading to you some passages from the book of Enoch about exactly what his experience was like when he got taken up to heaven and what he saw there. And then also how all of this turned into what is a related but totally separate thing known as Enochian magic. And you know, the book of Enoch is not even considered a real scripture by the Jewish church and Christian church. I'll explain all that and a lot more when we come back. Hey, you know, this show depends on people like you for support. That's right. You have to go to joshuapwarren.com, go to the Curiosity Shop, and buy something cool for yourself or a loved one. And I think there may be some new things there since the last time we went. And sometimes I have things that I make such a small batch, I don't even put it in the Curiosity Shop. I only alert you to it if you are a subscriber to my free and spam-free newsletter. Right there on the homepage of joshuapwarren.com. Type in your email address, hit the submit button. You will be a subscriber, and you will instantly receive an email from me that has some free online goodies for you. A free online good luck charm, some money magic secrets, I think at least one or two of my books. All you have to do is put your email address, hit submit at
All right, did I miss anything?
I am Joshua P. Warren, and you're listening to Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast and Paranormal Podcast Network. And I will be right back.
In the quiet town of Avella, Pennsylvania, Jared and Christy Akron seemed to have it all. A whirlwind romance, a new home, and twins on the way. What no one knew was that Christy was hiding a secret so shocking it would tear their world apart. One woman, two lives, and the truth more terrifying than anyone could imagine.
Whereas one of the suspects thinking they were doing it.
You're going to go to jail. You don't come with us right now.
Throughout this whole thing, I kept telling myself, nobody's that crazy.
Uncover the chilling mystery that will leave you questioning everything. Story of the lengths we go to protect our darkest secrets.
She went fast, she's crazy, shot and killed all the farm animals, slaughtered them in front of the kids, tried to burn her house down.
Audio Up presents The Unbelievable on the iHeartRadio and Apple Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome to the Make It Deeper with the Squeakle Podcast. Today we're talking to Dan from Toyota all about Toyota Talk. So, Dan, got any red Tacomas?
Yeah, we have a great selection of vehicles, including Tacomas.
I could tell that you missus down to Florida to go somewhere.
Did you say Florida? Can the elves and I go too?
Dealer inventory may vary. Offers are subject to change throughout Toyota Family Days on January 6th. See your participating Toyota dealer for details. Toyota, let's go places.
Do you have an idea for an investment or new product and don't know what to do next? Inventors, Inventive can help you get started with your idea. Call 1-800-INVENTION or go to
Your style should reflect your life, effortless, comfortable, and inspired by nature. For 40 years, Coldwater Creek has been bringing you timeless designs, from rich seasonal palettes to carefully crafted fabrics. Our styles are made for every woman in every size. Let your wardrobe tell your story. Confident, adventurous, and beautifully you. Discover more at coldwatercreek.com.
This holiday season, Work Brothers is fresh and cheer with amazing deals on tires and auto service. Whether you're navigating stormy streets or holiday travel, we want to make sure you get the greatest deal. Check us out the holiday season from top tire brands like Goodyear, Kelly, Bridgestone, plus enjoy free alignment checks, complimentary back, brake, and light inspection. So stop by your nearest Work Brothers and schedule your service online today. While you're sipping cocoa, check out our latest offers at workbrothers.com. Work Brothers, your holiday safety meets savings. So there are just like some inconsistencies like that, and it just, I don't know. I mean, you can imagine how deeply rooted in tradition a lot of those decisions are. All right. So having said that, the story of Enoch, and of course Enochian magic, which is where I'm heading, is so vast, it's overwhelming. So in a podcast, I can only give you an overview from what I've read and researched, and perhaps whet your appetite for more serious, accurate, and in-depth research that you can do on your own. In fact, you can easily find the book of Enoch as a free PDF if you search online, or if you just buy it or print it on Amazon. So I'm just going to give you some of the passages that I find particularly interesting. And I'm going to just kind of skip around with this. So he says, and this is before the flood, and it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. So they all talk, and they can go do this. It says, and they were in all 200 descended. It says they descended on the summit of Mount Hermon. And then they go through a list of the names of the leaders. So these are the names of the Nephilim. So these are names like Siliazaz, Arakiba, Ramiel, Kokobiel, Tamiel. I mean, I don't know how to pronounce this stuff. Anyway, it says, all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one. And they began to go in unto them and defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments, and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, E-L-L-S. I'm not sure how big that is, but I think it's pretty darn big. It says, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and then devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. And apparently, like this leader here, Azazel, taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of anatomy and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. And this Nephilim called the Simjaza taught enchantments, root cuttings, resolving of enchantments. And they started doing all kinds of bad stuff. It says a lot of men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. So up in heaven, they're paying attention. And it goes on to angels up there, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel. They're looking down from heaven. They see this blood being shed upon the earth, all the lawlessness being wrought. And they say, we got to do something about this. So they go to God, and God gives them permission to go down there and start the process of killing off these Nephilim and inspiring men to do it. And in fact, there's even one part where it's kind of, they say they tell them to take one of these Nephilim and just dig a big hole and throw them down on some spikes and bury him and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, Enoch in here, he is one of the few good men on earth that the Lord wants to save, and he wants to use Enoch as, I guess, a type of prophet who can tell people why they have erred, why all this is wrong, and he can help be a good diplomat, for an ambassador for God. So Enoch says that at some point he sees this vision in the clouds, as he describes it, that invited me, and a mist that summoned me. And the course of the stars and the lightnings sped and hastened me, and the winds caused me to fly and lifted me upward and bore me into heaven. And I went in till I drew nigh to a wall, which is built of crystals and surrounded by tongues of fire. And it began to affright me. And I went into the tongues of fire and drew nigh to a large house, which was built of crystals. And the walls of the house and the floor were made of crystals, and its groundwork was of crystal. Its ceiling was like the path of the stars and the lightnings, and between them were fiery cherubim, and their heaven was clear as water. A flaming fire surrounded the walls, and its portals blazed with fire. And I entered into that house, and it was hot as fire and as cold as ice. There were no delights of life therein. Fear covered me, and trembling got hold upon me. And as I quaked and trembled, I fell upon my face. And I beheld a vision, and lo, there was a second house, greater than the former, and the entire portal stood open before me, and it was built with flames of fire. And in every respect, it so excelled in splendor and magnificence, to an extent that I cannot describe to you the splendor. And its floor was of fire, and above it were lightnings, and the path of the stars, and the ceiling was a flaming fire. And I looked, and I saw a lofty throne. Its appearance was as crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun. And there was the vision of cherubim. Okay, we gotta take a break. We'll come back. I'll continue telling you a little bit more about what he sees. A lot of crystal. Heaven seems to, at least the entrance of heaven, is just full of crystals. Isn't that interesting? I'm always talking about the power of crystals. There's something truly magical about them. And this text was written thousands of years ago. He's describing this amazing vision. He's terrified. Crystals, radiance, stars, descriptions coming from the perspective of someone thousands of years ago. I'm Joshua P. Warren. You're listening to Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. And I'll be back after these important messages. Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. I'm your host, Joshua P. Warren, and this is the show where the unusual becomes usual. If you just look up the Nephilim, it says they are mysterious beings or people in the Bible, traditionally imagined as being of great size and strength, or alternatively beings of great power and authority. The origins of the Nephilim are disputed. Some, including the author of the Book of Enoch, view them as the offspring of rebellious angels and humans. Others view them as descendants of Seth and Cain. It says the reference to them is in. This reference to them is in Genesis chapter 6, 1 through 4, but the passage is ambiguous and the identity of the Nephilim is disputed. Scholars believe that Nephilim comes from the Hebrew word which means fall. And I've never the literature good description of what they look like. But I don't have time to get into this, but there are some researchers and scholars out there who believe that some of the early depictions of demons in certain cultures came directly from these descriptions of how the Nephilim appeared in person. And a good example of that would be go to a search engine and search for Bali, like the Indonesian part of the part of Indonesia called Bali, B-A-L-I, and just put Bali demons and look at the images that come up. Horrifying, scary looking things. And so if they look like that, then yeah, I can see why they were ruling the roost here on this planet for a while, taking advantage, doing whatever they wanted to, and then finally devouring people. What's happening here in heaven? Because Enoch, he now is entering the chamber of God, or so it seems. Let's see. All right, and from underneath the throne came streams of flaming fire, shone more brightly than the sun, and was whiter than any snow. None of the angels could enter and could behold his face by reason of the magnificence and glory, and no flesh could behold him. The flame of fire was around him, and a great fire stood before him, and none around could draw nigh him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, yet he needed no counselor. And the most holy ones who were nigh to him did not leave by night or depart from him. And until then I had been prostrate on my face, trembling. And the Lord called to me his own mouth, and he said to me, what do you think he said, folks? What do you think God said? He said, do not be afraid. Enoch, thou righteous man and scribe of righteousness, approach hither and hear my voice. And then God said, go to the watchers. And then he starts telling them to tell the watchers that you guys are screwed, and how'd you like to get that mission? And then, of course, like I said, Enoch, he gives all these messages to both humans and the Nephilim, and then the battle breaks out, and they start killing all these Nephilim, and then the flood ultimately is what wipes everything out and starts everything nice and fresh on planet Earth. Now, after this, though, what's kind of interesting is that the angels, they end up taking Enoch on this tour of the heavenly realms. And Enoch says the angels are sort of like, they're shapeshifters, and that they usually choose to look like humans when they are around him. But they start showing him these most magnificent, enchanted mountains and valleys and rivers of fire. There are portals. They go to some tunnels in the sky that show you places where people are being, I guess, tortured in so many words. And I mean, there's an enormous amount of detail. And I have not had the time to sit down and read every word of this, but it's the way he describes this. There's a lot of familiarity with like mountains and streams and valleys, but it kind of makes sense, because if Earth was created by God, then it kind of looks like something that's godlike, in the same way that humans were supposedly created in the image of God, etc. But there are definitely some kind of dreamy, psychedelic states all throughout this that you just really need to try to envision for yourself. It reminds you of stuff you've seen in like some kind of epic science fiction movies, and maybe that's where it comes from. Humans are kind of inspired subconsciously by these other realms that exist out there. And so go read this for yourself. And again, it's an epic story. But what does this have to do with Enochian magic? Because this was written thousands of years ago. But now we have to fast forward up into communicating with the light Enoch to be given astounding visions and insights into the spiritual realm. And it's interesting because it's based on this thing comes about. Again, let's jump from that Book of Enoch up to the Middle Ages. You probably have heard of John Dee. He lived from 1527 to 1608. He is the man that most people say inspired Merlin in the King Arthur stories. He was an English mathematician, astronomer, teacher, astrologer, occultist, and alchemist. He was the court astronomer for and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. Spent much of his time on alchemy, divination, hermetic philosophy. He had one of the largest libraries in England. He was a political advisor. He worked as a spy. He advocated the foundation of English colonies in the New World to form a British Empire, which is a term he has credited letters to Queen Elizabeth 007, meaning 2 zeros just for your eyes only, and 7 is just a lucky number. Well, he became fascinated with the Book of Enoch. And have these kinds of mystical interactions, similar experiences. And so basically, he went out and he thought that he needed somebody who was a talented medium or psychic of some kind to help him with this. And he started going out and meeting a lot of these supposed seers, and he was very disappointed. And then finally, he met this man named Edward Kelly. It just really impressed him. And so they started working together. And they started going through all these meditations. They go through periods of purification, prayer, fasting. And then little by little, they started being contacted by these angels. They said that the angels could speak good English, but they also had their own language, which they learned over time. And this all ended up becoming a major part of John Dee's lifestyle, practicing angelical magic or Enochian magic. And so it was so influential, in fact, that what they discovered throughout this period of years of practicing this on a regular basis, it inspired some of these other organizations like the Golden Dawn, and even later on, Aleister Crowley's Thelema, which is not necessarily a good thing because he was into some pretty wacky stuff. You've heard me talk about him before. But it is a form of magic, and it has a lot to do also with preparing the body and then putting yourself in a certain state of mind where you have these mystical tools around you. And then you start, you say some spells, and then you start scrying. You have a scrying tool of some kind. It could be a crystal ball that's black or clear, or it could be a concave mirror or a convex mirror. I guess any kind of mirror is better than no mirror. Aleister Crowley had some kind of a gemstone that he would use to scry and raise it up to his head. When we come back from this break, I'm going to tell you what I've learned about the specifics of how to produce an Enochian magical ritual. I bought this book called The Essential Enochian Memoir by Aaron Leitch, I'm not sure, Leitch. There are certain tools that you need. I'm going to tell you what those tools are, and then I'm going to give you a little sample of some of these spells. And if we have time, I may even have a very interesting listener email from you. I'm Joshua P. Warren, and you're listening to Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. And I will be right back. Podcast Network. I am your host, Joshua P. Warren. And John Dee, he was a pretty meticulous note taker. He kept journals. And so at the heart of Enochian magic's origin are manuscripts attributed to John Dee and Edward Kelly, notably one called the 5 Books of Mystery and another called Liber Logeth. These texts serve as pivotal foundations encoding the intricate language, symbolism, and rituals intrinsic to Enochian magic. Of course, over the years, other magicians have sort of enriched the text and added certain things and done expanded versions and so on. But so I have this book called The Essential Enochian Grimoire, an introduction to angel magic from Dr. John Dee to the Golden Dawn. And I looked the guy's name up to make sure I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Aaron Leitch, Aaronleitch. It's a really good book. It's a big book. It's about 350 pages. And basically, I mean, he goes through the angel language. If that's something that you're interested in learning, there's tons of symbols in here. But basically, here's what I've been able to glean so far. If you want to start practicing, there's a section here called the Angelic Magical Tools. And one of the first things that it appears you need is what's called the Holy Table. This is like your altar. The Holy Table must be 3 feet by 3 feet wide. So it's a square. And 3 feet tall because it's on it's on a stand. It has on each corner it has a stand. It's a table with legs, okay? I'm overcomplicating this. So it's 3 feet by 3 feet wide and 3 feet tall, thus forming a perfect convenience. In Dee's lifetime, around the same as Shakespeare's, the word sweet was most commonly used to indicate taste rather than smell. So anyway, there's a certain symbol on it that looks very much like the Star of David. It's got a bunch of other symbols. And then there are symbols at the feet of the legs of the table. So that's the first thing you need. You need a table that looks something like this. The second thing here, you need an angelic scrying stone that goes in the middle of the table. Crystal ball, or shoe stone, as it's sometimes called, is perhaps the most famous magical tool associated with Dee and Kelly. However, there has been some fusion over the scrying receptacles used by the men to scry. And so, as I mentioned, there are a lot of different things you can use for scrying. The third thing that you need is the Enochian, I keep saying Enochian, but I guess it's Enochian, whatever, tomato, I suppose. The Enochian Ring of Solomon. Now, if you've studied like the Seals of Solomon, you may know that there is a ring out there that's called the Seal of Solomon or the Ring of Solomon that, according to some texts, Solomon would use in order to control demons. That's one type of ring, and that's a really cool type of ring, and I have a couple versions of that type of ring myself. However, this is a different ring design, the one called the Enochian Ring of Solomon. And this one is a gold ring, ideally, and it has a square face on it. It has a symbol that looks like a circle with a horizontal cross going through it, kind of like the planet Saturn. And then it has 6 letters, PVE at the top, and then ELL. And supposedly these are references to the Hebrew language. I do not know the Hebrew language, but from what I can tell here, they're saying that those letters, let's see here, the P, some of these letters, they refer to wonder and miracle, and then also refers to the name
ladies
of
and
the
gentlemen,
one or the
this
first,
is where
which is
I'm
ultimately a reference to the
turning
name
it
of
off,
God.
and I will be back on later tonight.
Kind of like the basis of the
About
But then from there, I mean, there are all kinds of different things you can dig into. But
8 o'clock, and I'll see y'all later.
That I I found so far. In some cases,